Kier Starmer's government has stood up and publicly defended first cousin marriage, something that is causing horrendous problems, not just for the UK authorities because the amount of disability benefits being paid out to the resultant children, but also is causing significant poverty within the Muslim community where it's prevalent. Now listen, loads of people moan at me for when I talk about Islam, but I just want to be very, very clear. I'm not critical of the religion of Islam, and you can see that from all my videos. I'm concerned about third world practices that are being brought into the country. So if you are a Muslim and you're watching this, I hope that you will support my position and go against what Kier Starmer and the NHS are doing, because I don't think it's good news for anyone at all. And of course, I need hardly say there's nothing in the Quran to say you should be marrying your immediate family or indeed your first cousins. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this video. It's been an amazing month and thank you to everyone who's tuned in. But I do want to complain to you ever so slightly because still 60%, even as many as 70% of you watching this don't subscribe. Now just to explain, subscribing doesn't always ensure you get all my videos. You can only do that by hitting the bell notification icon, but it does make it more likely that you will see my videos. It's all of a bit of a weird system with algorithms. But anyway, let's talk specifically about this video. So first cousin marriage is not illegal in the UK, but it is comparatively rare, or at least it was until uncontrolled immigration from the third world. There are some famous examples of people who've married their first cousin. Most people will talk about Victoria and Albert. The Queen and Prince Philip were distant cousins, as in Prince Philip appears twice on the royal family tree, once as a prince of Greece and Denmark and once as the wife of the monarch, although by the time he appears, it is quite distant. But I will say Victoria and Albert are grandparents or great-grandparents, whatever number, to King Charles via both of his parents. So there has been a problem with inbreeding there. And there was always talk, remember the Habsburg chin, which is that famous royal family in Europe, the Austro-Hungarians. In the end, they had one king, I think it was King Charles of Spain, who was so big, his chin was so big that he actually couldn't actually close his mouth and just drooled constantly. So unfortunately, he's one of the worst victims really of inbreeding in history. Well, the reason why first cousin marriage is not illegal in Britain is because actually the reason that we prohibit marriage between close relatives actually has nothing to do with birth defects. It was only brought in to clarify the situation on things like inheritance. So if a mother married her son, then what would the other sons get in terms of the inheritance and all this sort of caper? And obviously when you're talking about siblings marrying and mothers marrying their children or fathers marrying their children, you've got to remember that it was principally to do with dynasties and whatever. I don't think they were actually genuinely in love. Love marriage is something that is comparatively recent, really, in the UK. A lot of this would be a duke marries a duchess, a prince marries a princess and all that sort of caper. Anyway, what is happening in Britain? Well, it's not uncommon to marry within the community, in any community, whether that be Jewish people, whether that be evangelical Christians, whether it be Muslims, whether it be whoever. Obviously, people specifically from Pakistan and Bangladesh have a particular problem. And the particular problem actually has nothing to do with religion. It doesn't actually even have anything to do with Pakistan or Bangladesh in of itself. What's happening in our country is not immigration. What's happening is we are transplanting one by one the population of villages in Pakistan and Bangladesh to the United Kingdom. And so the reason people are marrying their first cousin, once again, is not love. And it's not even really that their parents believe in arranged marriage. It's that the next person on the list of people to come over from Pakistan or Bangladesh is the person you marry. Now, consequently, what happens is these first cousin marriages are to children of first cousin marriages and children of first cousin marriages, and they tend to just go down and down and down. The NHS under Kier Starmer has said that we should remember the important economic and social benefits to first cousin marriage. I find that grotesque and offensive simply because it's not for the NHS to worry about the economic benefits, and by the way, they certainly didn't during COVID, did they? But it's not for them to think about that. It's for them to think about the pure medicine of the situation. And let me tell you, there are significant problems here, because whilst only 2.5% of the population, 2.5% of the population have birth defects or long-term ailments, that rises significantly in people who are first cousin marriages. And it means, actually, believe it or not, this is an unbelievable statistic, that studies in Bradford, and Bradford is a particularly working class area, it has to be said, but studies in Bradford have said up to 10% of children born to Pakistani families have some sort of birth defect, have some sort of problem going forward related to problems with their genetics. If you are a British Bengali in Yorkshire, you are 17 times more likely to have one of these defects than people in the general normal population. Now, bluntly, there is a way to resolve this. It's very, very simple. That is to ban first cousin marriages. Now, I understand that that may be against the cultural practices within the third world, but my argument has always been that we should be saying to people who come from the third world, the reason the third world is poor is because of backward practices. And actually, when you come to the West, you should adopt Western ways and you'll be richer and more successful as a result. Because what are we constantly seeing in this country? It's something that I've railed against on this channel multiple times. Instead of us continuing what we're doing successfully and people come here and adopt those principles, what we're actually doing is we're being dragged back into the 7th century by people from backward regimes. So for me, if somebody comes from Somalia, and admittedly Somalia isn't affected by this, but if somebody comes from Somalia, the Somalians should become more British, not Britain should become more Somalian. That is the issue that we've got. And actually, when you talk about irresponsibility, I understand when somebody might stand up in a debate in the House of Commons and say that we don't want to offend people who've come to this country, not a major concern for me, but it might be for an elected representative. But I can't understand why somebody in charge of the NHS, as Kier Starmer is, could back this position. The guidance to people about the economic and social benefit of first cousin marriage should be withdrawn. The NHS should say very clearly, it is not in the lap of God whether your child will have a birth defect. There are many and multiple factors, but there are things that you can do that will help. First of all, something that Muslims often do, don't drink during pregnancy. Well, don't drink at all in the case of most Muslim mums, but it's not universal. Things like smoking is a bad idea during pregnancy. Similarly, going to foreign countries where there's infectious disease. I had a friend who almost lost a child when he went to Barbados during the pregnancy, took his wife and the baby was incredibly ill. But one of the things that you must absolutely not do, and it is one of the key things, is to not marry your first cousin, particularly if she or he was the result of a first cousin marriage themselves. This is something that causes problems. And remember, the final point is the British taxpayer. It's very easy to say, well, it's your choice, you do what you want, when you are suffering the consequences only. What happens with these children? They're not thrown out of their homes, they're not abandoned. Most people from Pakistan and Bangladesh wouldn't do that. But what happens is, whilst they live at home, they cost millions collectively to the taxpayer for all the care that they need, picked up by the Sunshine Bus every day and taken away. There's a cost associated with that. And what annoys me is you have families who are wholly or partly reliant on benefits, who are being so irresponsible and just saying, don't worry, Britain will pay for it. That's not acceptable, and Kier Starmer shouldn't be endorsing it. Thank you so much for watching this. Until next time, goodbye.